Ride or die. My name is Jacob Heimovitz, and when I have the LG OLED B6 55-inch 4K Ultra HD Multi-HDR with Dolby Vision OLED Smart 4K Ultra HD TV from 2016, and I have the Sony HD Z9F 3.1 channel Dolby Atmos and DTS6 soundbar with wireless subwoofer and vertical surround engine. And I'm about to get the rear speakers if I get be good. But the Sony HD Z9F Dolby Atmos soundbar creates a 7.1.2 sound and 3.1 soundbar. It sounds extremely loud. It sounds like going to see a movie with Dolby Atmos ceiling speakers. But it sounds like having speakers in the ceiling. And the LG OLED 4K HDR TV, they get improved over the years. But the processing, motion resolution, and viewing angle is totally excellent. Cinematic viewing at its finest. Cinematic viewing at its finest. I have it 2 years ago, the LG OLED 4K HDR TV. When I watch a movie on HD SDR and an OLED 4K HDR TV with the Dolby Atmos DTS6 soundbar, it's like seeing a movie. It's the same as seeing a movie in a standard format movie theater with digital projection and Atmos or DTS6 ceiling speakers. And when I see a 4K SDR movie on a OLED 4K HDR TV, it's like seeing a movie at a standard format movie theater with Dolby Atmos ceiling speakers and DTS6 ceiling speakers. When you watch a 4K HDR movie on a 4K HDR movie on a Dolby Atmos, on a 4K OLED HDR TV and a Dolby Atmos and DTS6 soundbar with wireless subwoofer, it's totally like seeing a movie in Dolby Cinema or other HDR theaters like IMAX Laser or Pacific Theaters in Chatsworth, the Samsung 4K HDR theater, and the new Regency Theaters THX Ultimate Cinema. I haven't been to those three HDR theaters, but I have been to Dolby Cinema only. I've only been to regular IMAX. I saw the Fast and the Furious 7 in IMAX on April 2015 with Nick when I was 17, and the picture quality, sound quality was excellent. So far, The Fast and the Furious and Independence Day are one of my favorite movies of all time. My parents would not let me see those films when I was 6 and 10, but when I was 18, I watched Independence Day. When I was 15, I started watching the Fast and the Furious films and loved it. Here is the first 3 Fast and Furious movies I got at Best Buy, and you can see I got it for later this year. I meant last year later than the last year, in October 2018 on Saturday. And I finally got Fast and Furious 4 on 4K Blu Ray and Fast and Furious 5 on 4K Blu Ray. I've owned the Fast and Furious films, I think 2 times. And this is my 3rd time I've owned all the Fast and Furious movies. I have Fast and Furious 6, Fast and Furious 7, and Fast and Furious 8, The Fate of the Furious on 4K HDR Dolby Vision and on Vudu on my OLED 4K HDR Smart TV on Vudu and 4K Dolby Vision. The reason why I love the Fast and Furious 6, 7, and 8 in Dolby Vision much better than the HDR10, because Fast and Furious 6 and 7 and 8, well, they have Fast and Furious 8 on 4K Blu-ray with Dolby Vision, but the Fast and Furious 6, 7, and 8 all in Dolby Vision 4K HDR are optimized scene by scene, and I love Dolby Vision. And I'm a huge diehard Fast and Furious fan and Independence Day movie fan. I have 2 of my favorite movies on 4K HDR, which I'll show you a video about that later. But man, I love those films. They're one of my favorites. The action is great, the special effects are great, the acting is great. I love them. When I was 6 and 10, my parents would never let me watch the Fast and the Furious, the first 3 movies. It was too violent and explicit for me. But I finally got to see when I was 15 on TNT, the Fast and Furious 1. I got to see it on television when I was 15, and I liked it. I saw Fast and Furious 6 in theaters when I was 15 at the Cinemark Century 8 North Hollywood, Pacific Shrimp 5, and the very cheap Dollar Regency Valley Plaza 6. I saw Fast and Furious 7 on IMAX, and we had a great time. There's a new Fast and Furious movie called Hobbs and Shaw. I definitely want to see that in Dolby Cinema or any 4K HDR theater with ceiling speakers. But the tickets aren't on sale yet, so I want to see it in Dolby Cinema. I've never seen a Fast and Furious movie in Dolby Cinema before. Well, I got to see Fast and Furious when I was a teenager in high school. I didn't see it when I was in elementary school. Even though it stars Vin Diesel and I like Vin Diesel, I've only seen The Pacifier. Because when I was 7 and 9 or 10, when I was 7, 8, 9, and 10, my parents would only let me watch the Pacifier, not the Fast and Furious films. The bad news, my parents did let me see Triple X, and I saw when I was 8 with Tall in June 2006 and liked it. It's a very unhappy, I hate that memory. But the good thing is, Toy Story is one of my favorite kids movies of all time when I was like 2 to 10, and Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius is one of my favorite. It's my favorite movie of all time when I was 7 to 10. Ice Age and Shrek films are one of my favorite movies when I was a little kid. Those are all four of my favorite childhood movies when I was a little kid. When I was 2 to 10, my parents would only let me see Toy Story films, not the Fast and Furious films, because it was too violent and explicit for me. And we'll get to Fast and Furious 4. This is the very first Fast and Furious movie that came out in theaters when I was a preteen and adolescent in middle school. I didn't want to see it because I wasn't mature enough to see it in theaters. HDR. Let me zoom in. DTSX is getting blurry. DTSX. Let's unbox it. I finally own all the Fast and Furious movies in 4K HDR. Except I have the 6, 7, and 8 movie on streaming on Vudu in Dolby Vision 4K, which I love. I got to open this thing. This has to be under 15 minutes. Look at standby technical. I'm not watching the Fast and Furious movies on 4K Blu-ray until I get the rear speakers from Sony for the HD Z9F Atmos soundbar. Let's get this open. Technical difficulty, standby. Sorry. Hurry up. Oh, here we go. Got it open. Actually, I own Fast and Furious 6. This is the third time I own all the Fast and Furious movies. 2 on Blu-ray, 1 in 4K HDR. I like the Fast and Furious first 5 movies in 4K Blu-ray with DTSX because it has better sound quality. I love to watch the Fast and Furious movies the first 5 Fast and Furious movies in 4K Blu-ray because it has DTSX. Here's the disc. Here's the code, and here's the Blu-ray movie. Let's get to the 5th one, which is the most fun. This is the first Fast and Furious movie that came out in theaters when I was a teenager in middle school, about to graduate middle school. But this is the second Fast and Furious movie that came out in theaters when I was an adolescent in middle school. HDR. Here's DTSX. Get this open. Get this open. And there we go. You got it open. Let's make sure not to damage this. Be careful. There you have it. All open. All open from its plastic prison. Here's the 4K disc, HDR, and the Blu-ray disc. And soon I'll be doing an unboxing of all my all-time favorite movies on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray with DTS6. I only have Fast and Furious 6, 7, and 8 on Vudu Dolby Vision 4K. And that's the wrap. Bye.